Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 125 on my RLDR Custom Creations YouTube channel. Well, we've got a lot of stuff going on here, and my student that's building the chair is getting to the point where she's soon going to need the forms to press the rockers. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So if you want to see how I do this, all you have to do is stay tuned. Well, there's a lot going on in this shop again. Sometimes a little bit too much, but hey, that's the way we roll. Now, I'm going to just kind of walk you through building this form to press the rocker part of the chair, and I'm going to do it the way I do it. Like, I know there are lots of different ways that you can do this. These jigs can look quite different, but I'm going to use what I have, and we're going to go ahead and do what I do. So, okay, now I've got some 5/8 OSB here, and the reason I'm using OSB is because I have it. So I bought 2 sheets of 5/8 to finish off my OSB cabinet section or shop cabinet section that I'm building at the other end of the shop. So what I did is we're getting into a changeover in student projects now. So I had my table saw all set up to radius fretboards, and I'll show you my little jig for that. It's kind of interesting. And so I had to take that apart yesterday and make it so that I could rip sheeting, because I wanted to make sure I got all the pieces out of the sheets that I had bought for that back cabinet before I started cutting up sheets for doing this jig. Because if I would have had a little bit more material, I would have made these a little wider. So this was all about trying to make sure I had enough material to get that cabinet done and this jig made. So I decided for the rocker part here that I think these are 10.5 inches. And I'm going to put 3 of them together. That makes, 3 times 5/8. Where's my math? We'll just measure instead. About 2 inches. So that's good because I want the rocker to be 1 3/4 inches wide. So that's going to work out good. But anyway, as far as the shop transition goes, like, yeah, we're gonna glue these together and cut out the form or the shape that we need. I haven't really progressed a whole lot further on my towel cabinet here. That's sitting there ready to go. I don't know if you can see it, but that big steel thing over there is my longboard press. And thank goodness my afternoon group yesterday, we were a little bit light on work. Like, they finished their veneers and they're ready to press, but there wasn't enough time in the day to press. So with the 20 minutes we had, we took and moved the press from the storage garage to the shop. And we got rid of the garden tractor here, so we traded space, so to say. But maybe before we get into today's topic, I'm just going to show you the radiusing jig that I use for fretboards, and I'm going to have to move you to do that. So sorry about this awkward camera juncture, but there it is. So I did not come up with this. This is something that I read in a luthier book 20, 30 years ago. And it just swings over the table saw blade, which looks kind of dangerous. We double side tape the fretboard onto the bottom here and then set everything correctly. And then my students stand well away and put basically no pressure on the bar and carefully swing it back and forth and advance it along. I know it looks bad. It would be better to do this with a sander, but this is the way it was done in that lutherie book that I read many years ago. So This is something I can do, and I don't have it permanently set up. So we have one fretboard to radius today yet, and then I can take this, pack it up, and take it into my luthier storage building. Yeah, I have one of those now. So anyway, that's this thing. But yeah, we're in a bit of a transition here. So I will bring you back when I am putting those pieces together.
1-0.
Well, I'm going to apply some glue here, and we're going to laminate those 3 layers together. I'm using Tight Bond 2 for this. This is totally unnecessary to use a good quality glue like this. Anything would do. But this is what I have, so this is what I use. So we're just going to spread it. I dumped way too much on, but that's the way it is. And I'm not going to clamp this together. I'm going to screw it together. And then I'll take the screws out when it's all dry. This doesn't matter if there's screw holes in it. It's just a jig. Okay, now I would normally, okay, let's knock something down here. I'm normally a glue-to-glue person, but in this case, that isn't as big a concern, I don't think, because I've got lots on here. But since I have extra, we're just going to float it over to the other one here. Okay, and now I'm just going to spread this a little bit. Well, I got a little bit of a mess here, but we'll clean that up later. That should do. So we'll, oops, slide this on there like that. And it says I have 1¼ screws here. They'll probably go through a little bit, which I'm not all that excited about, but make sure it's... And I'm just going to drive them in a little way. This is not a huge concern that I have this perfect. I need this quick. I could probably even leave the screws in if I just screwed around the perimeter. Just going through a little bit, which I guess it's a workbench after all, eh? Putting them in at a little bit of an angle. Now we'll just flip this over. And we'll give it some glue on this side. Maybe not quite as much as I did on the other side, because that was a bit too much. Oh, come on. Ouch. Got to watch your fingers on there. I think this should be far superior to the jig I had, because I used, oh man, that was old 2x6 that I had lying around that we had rejected. Still a bit too much for project wood, and I quickly just glued that together and screwed it, and that thing twisted like crazy. That jig was terrible. So it's a good thing that I'm building this again. But I know that other rocker worked, and that I don't know about this yet. I am gambling a little bit. I'm thinking it's going to be close enough that if we do have problems, we can fix it. But that's one of the downsides about having the first edition of something being the prototype. Thankfully, I have awesome students to work with that understand this. So my hat's off to them. Okay, so now we've got this side on here, and I'm just going to quickly oh, come on. We'll pick that up later. Come on. Oh, shoot, that went a little bit crazy. Oh, well, we're going to finish it up. I'm just going to finish it up off camera, and away we go. Okay, we'll bring you back when we're ready to cut this up. Well, there it is. It's all glued up, glued and screwed, and it's nice and straight and nice and flat. So it should really make a good form. So we'll bring you back when it's dry, pull the screws out, make the cuts, and away we go. We'll see you later. Well, it's later in the day. It's after supper, actually. We had a great afternoon in class. Got every student got further on their stuff, which was really good to see. And the glue on my blank form here is dry. So I am going to go and pull the screws out quickly and put them back where they go. I want to make sure I don't have any screws down the middle, because that's where I'm going to be cutting. So, but I'm going to take out every screw I can find. This OSB kind of hides. Oops, come on. Kind of hides the screws a little bit, makes them a little harder to find. I don't think I got some there. That's what the old. Okay, let's see how the lamination looks decent. I think it's going to be just fine to work with. So there. That is. Yeah, sometimes widgets from OSB cover the hole and hide. There we go. I think that's it. Okay, so we'll head on to the next stage. Well, this didn't quite go as good as I expected it to. I have the blank in place, and I think I've lined this up fairly good. It's quite, like, it's not perfectly lined up, because that way it doesn't work, but it's lined up so there's about equal amount of jig above and below the arc. I'm just going to push that up a wee bit. I like that a bit better. And I have it held in place with this guitar neck here. Whenever you have to hold something in place, it's always important to have an extra guitar neck handy. So this is actually the second attempt. I have a piece of carbon paper underneath here, and I was just going to set it down and trace it on, but you really have to press hard to have this transfer. So, but I don't want to cut the pattern, because I want to keep this pattern intact for when we assemble. And if it just transfers good enough so that I can see, and then I can darken it. I can darken it to, yeah, it's just barely showing, but it's good enough. Hoping this is lining up every time. This is probably not the best way to do this, but we'll do the best we can. Oh, it looks like it's lining up quite nicely. This guitar neck is doing a great job of holding this where it should be. And I can go till about here. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, you may not be able to see this at all, but I actually can. And good enough to be able to transfer, or not transfer, but scribe a darker line. I don't know how many more times in my career that I will use this jig, but I think this pattern will last long enough. I think it's definitely better than the one I had. As far as the pattern itself goes, if I have the proportions right, that's another thing. I'm a little concerned about that, but we'll do what we can. There we go. Okay, we've got that, and it looks pretty good. I mean, I could have, yeah, we've got, dropping it more, I don't know. This 10.5 inches is a little small for this, but we're going to cut it out, and away we go. So we'll see
And
what the bandsaw. I'm having a bit of a dilemma here. When I look at this form here, and if, like, usually when you make a form like this, you should cut out the area that's going to be occupied by your part. But I'm really, really tempted. This isn't a big bend. And I'm wondering if I can get away with just cutting one line and then leaving this amount here rather than this amount. So you know what? I think I'm going to try that. So yeah, I know it's probably not the way it should be done, but I'm hoping I can get away with it. So let's fire up the saw and get cutting. Well, that wasn't too bad. It's fairly smooth. Let's just see. This isn't a very good place to do this, but I think we're going to take some pieces and some clamps and see how this works. So I really would like to leave this in here, because if I cut this 1.5 inches out, that is really going to weaken this. So let's see what I can do. Okay, I'll be back in a bit. Well, I think it's going to work. Now I know that we should have cut out the space that the lamination is going to occupy, but even as I clamped this together, I noticed that this amount of material here, this would bend if I didn't make sure the clamps were applied evenly. And there's heavy pressure on the end now. One of the problems maybe with this form is this last bend is a little tight for the material that we're bending. This is jack pine, and the strips are 1/4 of an inch thick. It bends really beautifully in the rocker part, but where it tightens up, I actually had the top ply crack a bit over here. Now, the other thing is that I don't need to bend this whole curve. I could probably stop about there, and it would bend a little easier. But it's nice and tight. This seems to work. And I think it's about the minimal amount of material I'd want on either side. So is this perfect? No. But given the limitations of my material and time constraints, we're going to bend rockers out of here. Now, there is no guiding system so that these things end up in exactly the right places, but I just try to keep the ends even as I'm clamping. And I've done this many times before with the other jig, and trust me, this one works way easier because it's not twisted. So, is this perfect? No. Is it exactly the way you should do it? No. But with a relatively simple lamination like this, you'll get away with it. And that's what we're going to do. So anyway, the only thing I need to do yet is make sure that the glue doesn't stick to this. So I'm going to actually put some polyurethane on it, and we'll show you that, and we'll finish up this video. Well, we're at the last step. I was going to put some polyurethane on here, but since this is a jig that I'm just using up things on that I have, I found a partial can of wipe on poly, and I'm just going to start with that. Just pour it on. It soaks up pretty quickly into this OSB, but I'm hoping this will provide some protection from glue. We could use wax paper as well. I've done that, but it's a little bit clumsy, and this jig is, since it's not quite constructed like it should be, it'll be a little more difficult maybe to use. But the other thing is, I'm not sure how many of these chairs we're going to produce in this shop anymore. So, yeah, basically to sum this up, I used materials that I had. I made sure when I used this OSB that I got all the other pieces for my workbench at the other end of the shop. I got that out first because that's why I bought these sheets. So this, what I used up, was the partial sheet that I didn't need to complete my project. So that provides limitations right off the bat. I knew I wanted this thing at least, I think it's 1 7/8 inches, and that's what I needed, 3 plies. I knew that. So I simply took the waist, divided it by 3, and I ended up with 10.5-inch strips. Now, I realized when I cut this that 10.5 inches probably wasn't enough for this jig. It would have been nice to have had 12 or 14, but I didn't have it. So I worked with what I had, because otherwise this all gets super expensive. I noticed when I put those pieces in that I showed you, and I mentioned it, that I have to be very careful that I apply pressure evenly. Now, the other thing that happened with those test strips I had is they were dry. So I just grabbed them out of her pile, took the tape off, and popped them in here. They were bone dry. So once we get glue on them and there'll be some lubrication between the pieces, they will probably go together a bit easier. Now the one problem, and I mentioned it in the previous segment, is this tight curve at the end here. To mold this properly, I might have to take some other measures to get that wood to bend. But if we cut it, even if we end the lamination about here, that it only goes part way, that'll really help. I was bending right around it. So overall, considering that this isn't really right, like you should always take out the piece that you're going to occupy with your rocker or whatever piece you're making. That is the correct way to do it. But because of my limitations for material width, I decided to cheat a little bit. And it looks like in this case I'm going to get away with it. The laminations were nice and tight. They'll glue really nicely. But I had lots of pressure on here too. So I think it's going to work. If I had to, I guess I could cut this other piece out, but that gives me only about 1.5 inches there, and I just don't think that's enough. So in the end, I don't know if I should title this video how to kind of make a jig correctly, but it is what it is. So this is going to work. How long it's going to work, I don't know. I guess if worse came to worse and I had to cut that out, if I had to cut this out, I could put an angle iron on there and make it work. But that's thinking that we're going to be making a number of chairs a year. And this may be the only chair this ever makes. So, yeah, it's hard to tell how much I should put into one of these bending jigs. Now I do have one more to make, and that curve is more pronounced. So, and I'm going to have to put pieces together to make that work, because I have another blank like this that's 10.5 inches wide, but I already looked. I'm going to need at least 16 inches to get that one to work, because it is a more arc in it. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. This is what I do in my everyday life. You try to stay one step ahead of your students if you can. But luckily, I mean, she's been cutting and sanding and getting all the laminated pieces ready. And now I have one jig ready to go after I put some finish on here. And next Wednesday, she can start laminating and working on her pieces. And hopefully by then, I might have the other one done. I don't know if I'm going to show that to you on camera, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, bent lamination is a great way to bend wood. With me teaching in the school shop, we bent wood almost every way. I think every way possible. We steam bent, we bent guitar sides with light bulbs in a form, just basically heat and a little bit of moisture. Bent laminations, you name it, we did it. And students, I think, get a real sense of accomplishment being able to take something that was growing straight up and making it curve. So anyway, with that in mind, that brings this video to a close. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the weekend edition. Oh, by the way, Frosty, we're at 463. We're getting there. Would sure be great if we could get up to that 500 mark and we could give Frosty away, and then we could start planning for the 1,000 subscriber giveaway, which I think we're going to do something pretty special. So with that in mind, like I said, see you on the weekend edition. Have a wonderful tail end of this week.